I appreciate you being back. And today we're going to continue on with Gods and More Gods. And Don has sent his people out to pretty much destroy everybody else's boats. So we're going to find out how that's going for him. And the title of this one is Conundrum. On the lead ship, Admiral Timothy was holding a meeting with the captains. Their task was simple: blast any ship that wasn't theirs. Send them scurrying back home. Question of what they should do with the survivors required careful consideration. It was determined by mutual consent to pick them up and deliver them home. This way they showed determination of intent along with mercy. Each captain received a map and was sent back to their own ship. Each had an area they were responsible for. At the end of the month, they would meet and sort out the passengers that they had accumulated, and each ship would return them to their point of origin. Once accomplished, they would head home to refit and resupply and then head out again until all ships were destroyed. Splitting apart, the ships sailed, ready to do battle to preserve peace by the expedient of war. Don had earlier sent them to Gladys's location to seek out the village he had seen. There they had learned about explosives. With this knowledge, they created cannons with a little help from Gladys's library. The naval officers who went there were amazed at the learning that could be found. Many determined that when the war was over, they would return to learn what could not be learned from home. In the meantime, they and their crews held themselves in readiness. The first ship that the Admiral descended on was little more than a skiff, small and single-sailed, and moved gracefully through the water. The crew of 3 were competent and handled the vessel well. The captain saw that such a vessel could not travel farther than several miles from their own shores. These were not the threat they were looking for. The crew waved and marveled at the sleek ship that sailed past. Had the Admiral been one to blindly follow orders, his craft would have sunk like any other. The crew were luckier than those encountered by the other ships. They fired on any ship no matter what size or use. The Admiral fired on several larger ships whose distance from shore made it clear that they were traveling to other lands. The survivors were brought on board and held on deck to wait others they might pick up. The Admiral was disdainful of these treacherous mariners who sought the destruction of others simply to gain objects of value. As time passed and more people were added to the passengers, he noticed that not once had they been fired on. The longer the voyage, the more he became concerned. Could his God have been wrong? These people hardly seemed a threat to anyone. None were armed for fighting, even so much as a stick or a club. Walking amongst the people he had rescued, he picked some of them to talk to. Sitting apart on deck, he inquired as to what they were doing so far from home. The answer was always the same. They had been sent to learn and establish trade so that all might share in the wealth of their lands. That phrase of being sent to learn began to trouble him. Hadn't he been sent to another land to learn? Hadn't they done what they were accusing others of doing? And this business of trade, wasn't that a good way to dealing with things you acquire? I have something of value, and so do you. Let's trade that we each get what we need. There is also the fact that none of their ships had the means to wage war. Here again, when they had gone to the land of Gladys, he had, he had taken items that God had deemed valuable to trade for the iron cylinders that had made the cannons they were using. His conscience began to bother him. He ordered his ships to take these people home. While talking to the people, he determined how many lives had been lost by his actions. 15 had drowned or been killed from the cannon fire. Well, perhaps not a large number, but these people had died at his hands. More and more, he considered what they were doing was wrong. These questions and the answers he received were heard by the crew. They also began to question their mission and the motive for the destruction they had caused. Darrell asked his lookout to keep a keen eye out for other of their ships. He wanted to talk to another captain. Pausing the last of the sailors at their home port, he chanced on another of Don's ships. Hailing them, he was welcomed on board. The ship was under the command of Captain Fallow. Timothy, who was ushered to the bow of the boat, and the two officers sat on the guardrail to talk. Timothy hoped that Fallow had also had a realization that things might not be as straightforward as they had been told. He opened the discussion with a simple inquiry. "Well, how have you fared so far?" Fallow's eyes gleamed with pride. "We have sunk at least 15 vessels, both large and small. Most of the small were fishing vessels, but a ship is a ship, so we destroyed them." Timothy was disgusted by Fallow's pride in what he had accomplished. "How many times did they fire upon you?" Fellows laughed. Fellows laughed heartily. "Every once. A single shot from us was all it took." "And how many of those people you took threatened to do harm to you or your ship?" Fellow chuckled again. "A threat? Why, they have been as good as gold and as quiet as sheep." Timothy could see Fellow wasn't catching his meaning. "Captain Fellow, by your own admission, none of the vessels you destroyed were of any threat. None of the people you rescued were a threat either. Yet lives have been surely lost in these encounters by people who are not a hazard to either of us." His anger suddenly flamed. "Damn it, man! The only menacing people out here are us. We are the only ones waging war, destroying property and lives. We are the aggressors. We are the danger." He forced himself to calm down. "In talking to these people, I have learned that each land has a god, and since we have one whom we can see, talk to, and revere, I have to assume they do too. Our god was weak from lack of reverence, but those other gods may not be." Bell's face turned ashen as he gazed at the distant shoreline. The god were told that their people had been attacked without provocation, they might take action. He considered the alternative and came to a decision. "We must not rescue those who survive. There can be no survivors to tell their gods what we have done. What we must continue to do." Tim smote his forehead. "When their ship is sinking, won't they cry out to their god for help? As they paddle and sink in the water, won't they pray to be rescued? When they arrive, we are found amongst those that we have destroyed, those who are praying to their god. When that god arrives, what are we to say that will prevent our own destruction?" Oh, again was struck by this reasoning. "Then we must destroy them quickly. We must continue to fire until nothing is left. If we do it quickly, they will not have time to pray or call on their god. Perhaps if we go in pairs, we can do it quicker. A small fishing boat is no problem, but a larger ship? Yeah, that might be better with two." Tim was getting angry by the moment. "Bell, don't you see? The only people waging war is us." Bell stood haughtily, raising a finger skyward. "We have been given our orders by our god." He stormed away without saying goodbye. Back on his own ship, the Admiral ordered his crew to do the unthinkable. He ordered them to open fire on one of their own ships. He gathered his crew and explained his reasons. Without their understanding why, they would never do what he was ordering them to. Once they understood and saw the error of their ways, they were ready. Captain Fallow's ship was caught by surprise and was sunk before they understood what was happening. The work of rescuing began soon after, and the first to be brought ashore was Captain Fallow himself. He splashed up to his admiral and raged at him. Words were not enough, and he lashed out, striking blow after blow against the admiral, who did not even raise his hands to protect himself. Both crews grabbed Captain Fallow and trussed him up, placing him in a corner to recover. Crews looked to their admiral for their orders. "We'll go and seek the others and either convince them or—" His words were left unspoken. They all knew what the alternative must be. Prayers of anguish were received by Larry and Gladys. Some were said in terror, some in desperation, and some in the last throes of life. Prayers were heard, but the gods that they were praying to were not able to assist. Since the beginning, they had not asked for prayers, so that now, when so few were praying, they did not have enough strength to assist. Peter also received prayers and was in a similar condition. He was able to see, but not to act. Only Ash and Gary were strong enough to assist. They located the source of the prayers of their people and scooped them out of the water. Like Gulliver, they brought the invading ships to their shores. There they heard the story of Don's deceit. Ash went to the other gods and found their people too were being attacked. Overflowing with prayers, Ash gave each a measure that they could rescue their people. Gary arrived as Ash was discussing what was happening. Ash was determined that he would deal with Don himself. The others were welcome to bring the other ships to Don's shores. Ash mounted onto one of the ships and willed it home to Don's fort. The other ships in tow flew at a furious pace, dragged along in the lead boat's wake. So fast were they going that they sped half a mile over land. The bombs were ground into splinters and only the upper deck remained. Ash looked over the guardrail and asked where he could find their god. Don was coming to meet him, and he was spitting blood. "What are you doing to my fleet?" he roared out. He made motions to grab Ash by the throat, only to be held in check by a force Don had never felt before. Ash had been continually receiving reverence for so long that his powers were temporarily those of an over-god. Don was being repulsed by his own rage. Ash looked back at the ocean and saw the rest of Don's fleet coming in like a tidal wave. At the stern of each was another god. All ships were beached in the same manner as the group Ash had brought in. The gods dismounted and strode to where Ash and Don were. All that anger written plain on their faces. How angry they must have been was shown in the faces of terror on the ship's crew. They stood to either side of Ash. Their anger concerned him, but Don was not about to let them win. He had the authority of an over-god behind him. "You can do nothing, because I am doing what is right. I am doing what Fred's God has ordered me to. Against them, you can do nothing. They'll turn you back into spirits, and I will be the only God." Ash laughed at his face. "Call your overgod. Let them come and explain why something so destructive, callous, and disruptive to the mission they assigned us is being done." Don prayed fervently for aid. He prayed until sweat was pouring from his brow. His eyes tightly shut and his face screwed up in fierce concentration, he tried to pray even stronger. In their apartment, Karen could feel a strong pulling prayer. She was almost being dragged to where Don was, calling on all her concentration and power to hold himself in place. When she finally felt the release, she knew something momentous had happened. At the moment, she was powerless to help, as it would show her hand. She shrugged and left Don to his fate. On Earth, Don opened one eye, expecting to see his God in a blaze of glory coming to aid him. It was nothing. All right, that's it. Next one is explanations, and then we're about 6 chapters to the end. So we're getting there. I look forward to seeing you in the next reading. That'll be in a day or two. And until then, thank you for being here. Appreciate you visiting. And I look forward to seeing you on the next reading. So be good and be good to yourself.